This seems to be an interesting one. I think it's split opinion, really, in amongst Hornets fans. We talked about this at length. You said you found it so hard to figure out how this was going to play out. What do you make of this situation? Do you think it's a fair way the events have gone?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was not what I thought was going to happen with that. So clearly, I was right to be
Me
not
neither.
confident at all in what I thought was going to happen, because this would not have been.
Why not? Let's just pull that. Why did we not talk about this as an option when we talked about it in our preview podcast? I have
So
my own theory, but I'd
yeah,
like to hear from you.
I think part of it is that, and this isn't any one group's fault specifically, but the details through which, like, his restricted free agency, like where that stands and what his contract status is and whatnot over the last year, has been really confusing and like not ever really been like clearly stated by either the team or the NBA. It's just like people reporting and like reading the CBA and kind of inferring like what might happen. Because I remember, wasn't it like it was supposed to be in like March or something that the qualifying offer got rescinded automatically and he couldn't receive it anymore or something? Obviously, that wasn't true because he received it again. And then my initial understanding of it was that he wasn't able to accept that qualifying offer because he let it expire already. And the only reason it was there was to qualify him as a free agent. Okay,
I can
so
clarify on that
perfect.
bit.
Yes,
His qualifying offer did expire from last season, right?
right.
But
So
because they maintain his rights, you
you
basically
can offer two of them.
you basically restart again. It's like having an overseas player that you
Okay.
extend your qualifying offer to an overseas player if you have their rights. So like the Hornets, for example, still have like Isaiah Thomas's qualifying offer on their salary cap at the minute, which they're holding, and they can renounce whenever they want, whenever they need to. So it's something that would stay there basically until there was a resolution with Miles Bridges, or they decided to renounce his rights entirely. So it did expire, but then as soon as you hit the new financial year, you still maintain his rights and you can retender it.
Okay. See, that makes sense. But and then now that's with the new CBA. I wasn't sure if there was any new rule that might have
Yeah.
changed with that or anything, which I'm sure there might be. But even going forward, like another thing that kind of reason I thought that this was unexpected was, I guess, like I maybe I thought the negotiations would just have been slightly closer in some way, even though there was like no real indication from either side, like one way or another, like how strongly they wanted to, have this reunion. It was just kind of like, we can infer from social media posts that there's mutual interest in a reunion, and that was basically the best we got. But
Well,
it seems like that was not as strong as maybe we had thought previously.
I do think there was a lot of reporting building up to it that Miles Bridges is widely expected to be back in Charlotte next year. I think we heard that from Mark Stein. I think we heard that from
I
Jake
think so,
Fisher.
yeah.
Rumblings throughout the latter half of the season and this offseason. I mean, what you said there is my main reason. I just thought that both Bridges' camp and the team have had so long to think about this,
Right.
that as soon as free agency hit, that they would almost have a plan in place. Like, and they'd have so long to bring it together. And Charlotte Hornets really, they didn't outwardly stand by Miles Bridges, but they were completely silent, really. And in my opinion, what that basically said was like they were not burning the bridges with Miles Bridges, which I thought would count for something long term. They kind of stood by him without standing by him publicly. And I kind of expected that, by Charlotte be willing to take Miles back onto the roster, that his agency would be like, look, you're doing us a solid. We're coming out of a difficult situation. Miles is lucky just to kind of be back in the NBA, to be in the league. And you still want to have him back even after he basically screwed your franchise for an entire year. Like, let's work something out here. It might not be a super long-term deal, but let's work something out where Miles gets paid a little bit of money. You get a little bit of team control. You get a bit of a discount for the inconvenience and missing 10 games for the upcoming season. And let's find a middle ground. And I'm still surprised that didn't happen. I'd love to know what the two sides are pushing for contract-wise. Are Clutch basically pretending that, the whole thing didn't happen and being like, yeah, we want $30 million, which is what we wanted last summer. And if that's the case, then I have no blame whatsoever of the front office for being like, well, we're just not doing that. Or Hornets trying to lowball it, saying, well, Miles, go get an offer sheet, and if not, we're gonna, we'll offer 12 million per year or 10 million per year, which is slightly above your qualifying offer. You have to get a deal elsewhere, or else that's what we're gonna offer. You just don't know which end of the spectrum this falls in, and without knowing those details, we might get reports in the coming months where both sides will probably try and claim victory or claim that they were treated poorly. I imagine we'll get conflicting reports. But that's the real key difference for me. And I am still surprised that they didn't get there. But like thinking about it now, I guess, yeah, I'm not shocked that it's ended up. Well, I am shocked it's ended up this way, but I can now see how it does make sense a little bit for both sides.
Yeah. And it's clear that like neither side was treating this with any level of like sentimentality at all. Like the Hornets were just going into it like, okay, we were gonna ready to pay you, X amount of dollars per year. Then this like really serious thing happened and you were arrested, pled no contest, missed an entire season of basketball, are now suspended for 30 games with 20 games served to start next season. That affects what we were going to pay you originally. Now we want to pay you this. And then Miles's camp, presumably what I think might have happened was just like, we don't think that has affected Miles's value as a basketball player. Like Miles is still this good at basketball. He was a 20 point per game scorer. He can do this, this, and this. Like he's still worth, whatever offer that they thought he was worth. And then the Hornets were like, nope, we don't think so. And then the Clutch said, okay. And they signed the qualifying offer because that was, I think they extended the qualifying offer on June 28th and he signed it July 1st or July 2nd, I think at this point. But obviously it wasn't very long. And there was a report Shams Charania mentioned in his tweet that Hornets had extended like their last final offer basically on Sunday. And so it was July 2nd. So and then that Sunday, they signed the qualifying offer. So clearly they were just like, no, and then the negotiations were just over once that final offer got in because it was probably so far off that there was just no point in continuing.
And it is interesting. You normally don't see the qualifying offer in a restricted free agency get signed that early in free agency.
Right. Exactly. Normally it was literally like 48 hours.
Yeah. Normally it lingers on for a week, 2, maybe sometimes a month. I remember Tristan Thompson went into like the freaking preseason.
Yeah. Greg Monroe took a super long time with it a while back with the Pistons as well. Like
you don't normally see this, and you have to think the off-court situation. His agency had basically been told by all the other teams, there is nothing out there. Do not wait. There's no point waiting. You're waiting for a phone call that is not coming from anywhere else. So if you're not taking their contract extension, you need to take the qualifying offer because there is nothing else coming in here. And it seemingly that's what they did. I do wonder as well. Like me and you have that assumption that have they not got closer, with these discussions? Maybe there has been something that we don't know about where they can't negotiate with Bridges' camp. I'm guessing they can't technically with Clutch during this whole year out. Maybe the rumors
that Mitch doesn't tamper. Maybe they're true. Maybe he waited until 6 p.m. on June 30th.
I do honestly. I think it might seem bizarre in the world of like corrupt NBA where you have teams losing draft picks for tampering every year, but maybe Mitch Kupchak genuinely had no single discussions with his agency ahead of free agency. And when they just started from too far away from each other. And they've not had that time to kind of think about it, to stew on it, and to come to an agreement over a longer period. And I do think that is very possibly a factor here, which hasn't been reported yet, but it would not shock me at all. We know from previous reporting that Mitch is known for that.
It's very interesting to know also that with this qualifying offer, Miles has a no trade clause for this season. So if he were to be moved, he controls his destination. And now he hits next summer as an unrestricted free agent with a no trade clause. So he's either picking his next destination in February or he's picking his next destination, at this time next year. So,
and it probably, in some ways, it might like increase his trade value for this trade deadline. Like, let's say the season doesn't go right. All of a sudden, he's on a $7.9 million contract, so his cap hold will be ultra low. any team trading for him would have his bird rights. So you could.
They do not get his bird rights though. That's the other thing. I read that.
Oh,
Because I saw someone tweet that and I looked up in the CBA. You don't get your bird rights when you trade a player that has signed the qualifying offer to another team. So the Hornets are still the only team that are going to be able to
retain
offer
his
him
bird rights.
5 years and
Wow.
like the
Okay,
full
that has
salary
changed
that he.
things. So
Yes,
I
it's
take it
it's
all
like a
back.
really interesting like value scenario. But I still don't think you're wrong though, because another team could just look at it as like we can basically get him for the playoff run, and then we'll have the same, chance that we would have anyway to sign him on the free agent market
As long as they've got cap space.
Right, exactly.
They'd have to have cap space for that to
Yes.
happen because they couldn't do it if they were already, that's the only thing. But that is interesting. And it does give, I guess, Charlotte a little bit more leverage in terms of re-signing him. I mean, the big question here is, what is that relationship like between his agency and front office? Like, it wouldn't shock me if Miles Bridges just later in the summer, like, moved agencies. It just wouldn't. There's a lot of baggage with Clutch. Like, yeah, they've stood by him over this past year, but this can't have been the situation how he wanted it to play out by signing that qualifying offer. And sometimes when you get situations like this, it's easy to be like, oh, if Miles plays well next season, the team can have him back. They can re-sign him. Both parties can be happy. You have to remember the human side of this. In these sort of negotiations, when teams are saying, we don't think you're worth it, it can really damage relationships a little bit. And I hope they aren't too strained for Charlotte's point of view in terms of just pure leverage. But the good news is, even if they are, let's say Bridges really is not happy with how he was treated, even though I think that would be outrageous because I think the Hornets have, if anything, been pretty lenient. There might be new ownership and leadership. Well, definitely new ownership and maybe new leadership in the Hornets front office by next summer. So when it comes to maybe negotiating about potential Miles Bridges staying in Charlotte on a longer term contract, he might be having those negotiations with different people than he was this year, which could potentially give Charlotte a little bit of leverage if there was, damaged relationships. $7.9 million a year, a 1-year deal. Do you think? What would you say the odds are that Miles Bridges is in Charlotte beyond this season?
I'd probably go 50. I might have to go 51-49, just because that 51% chance he stays, just because having his bird rights will definitely help for negotiating purposes. But I don't know, with how this has gone, it definitely seems like that they weren't as close, with a contract negotiation as they were, or as they may have seemed. And I think the only way that happens is if he not only plays really well, but re-ingratiates himself into the community in a way that, is impactful to the team, and, rehabs his value, in their eyes, because obviously that had not happened yet in a way that his camp thought was requisite with his contract value and what they wanted him to re-sign at. So,
and it's a lot easier to sign someone to a big contract a year removed from the thing happening and after having 82 games played. I'm not saying it's right, but it's just the truth. We see it in the NBA all the time. I think teams would be more willing to maybe offer Bridges more money next offseason after he's already gone to all the different stadiums. He's already played against them. The fans have probably already booed him. Like, everyone's kind of got it out of the system, and then people move on. It's not right, but it's just what happens in sport. And so I think I'd go less. I think I'd probably go like 30%, 35%, something in that realm, just because there's so many ways I think this can go wrong. He can play so well that he is, the number one or one of the top names in free agency that everyone are clamoring to get. And it might be clear and obvious that he's not happy in Charlotte. He could get an injury. He could fall out the rotation this year. It's a pretty packed front court. He might not have the role that he wants. There could be just so many things that go a little bit wrong that could lead to him maybe thinking, I do want to go elsewhere. And who knows if this fan base really connects. If Miles Bridges is getting booed by his own fans, is he going to want to come back here in unrestricted free agency next season? I don't think he will be. But that's little his experiences within the community. He's going to be a well-known face. You just don't know. You just don't know. So, yes, Miles Bridges is back in Charlotte. I guess this is a hard question. I'm not even going to ask you that question. I think from a basketball point of view, this makes the Hornets undoubtedly better for next season. They do lose leverage long-term, which you could end up losing the asset for free, for nothing, which is never something you want to do with a small forward, power forward, 20-point scoring wing who can do a little bit of everything. There is that risk. We could look back in 12 months and we could say that this was a great decision. We could look back in 12 months and this could be, wow, why didn't the Hornets go up to that $22 million that Miles Bridges was looking for? They would have been in a much better situation. It's just hard to know right now. We'll have to revisit this one in 12 months.